Have you ever wondered how successful people juggle their busy schedules and still manage to excel? In today's video, we're diving deep into the time management secrets of high achievers. Time is our most valued resource, so we will keep it short for you, so you can stay on top of your game. Let's get started. This is Wealthlocity. Here you create, protect, and grow your wealth fast. Generously overestimate the duration of tasks. Our brains are not particularly good at making exact estimates of how long a poorly defined process will take. The smaller and more detailed the task, the more accurately we can, consciously or unconsciously, assign a duration to this process. If I ask you how long it takes you to get up in the morning and get ready for the day, your overall estimate will be less accurate than if I ask you how long it takes you to brush your teeth, put on socks, or make coffee. To avoid drifting too much into micromanagement and writing things like washing your hair or showering into your calendar, many successful people simply use a stopwatch for the first few days of a new routine and then compare it with a previously estimated value. Over time, you know roughly by how much you are off, and simply add this to the original estimate. Let's say your error factor is around 0.25. That is, for a task with an estimated duration of 1 hour, 1 hour and 15 minutes would be estimated in the calendar. Initially, this factor could be around 0.5 for many people. The more you know your own habits, the smaller this deviation becomes over time. Particularly if you suddenly have a lot of unexpected free time between appointments, you can carefully reduce the factor for future appointments. Maximum capacity of 80% in the calendar. If you fill your calendar to 100% and just one appointment takes longer than expected, not only will everything be pushed back, or you will try to rush other appointments unnecessarily and work will be sloppy as a result, but your free time will also suffer because you will not be able to finish the last appointment until later in the day. By leaving small gaps in your calendar, 4 gaps of 5% each have proven to be effective. You have a little buffer so that you don't get into time pressure for the next appointment or the next task. As a bonus, you can plan small tasks for these 5% gaps that are not time-bound. For example, watching another of our videos, responding to posts on social media, etc. The first look in the morning and the last look in the evening go into the calendar. Before you start in the morning to work through all the messages that have accumulated overnight, the first thing you should do is look at the daily overview of your calendar. This will give you a rough idea of what to expect and make it less likely that you will forget something. For example, because you accidentally didn't set a reminder. It is also worth taking a similar look at the calendar for the next day in the evening, so that your subconscious has some time to prepare for what is to come. Set reminders 2 minutes before an appointment. Once you know roughly what is happening where and when in the morning, it is enough to have yourself reminded shortly beforehand. Reminders that are too early lead to you being distracted from the current task and your brain starting to think about the next one while you are already at one appointment. This means you lose valuable productive time. 2 minutes, on the other hand, are enough to close all browser tabs, take a quick look in the mirror, get a new drink, and then start the task on time. Know the calendar and routine of the most important people. A tip that surprised us ourselves at first was to know what the 5 to 10 most important people you surround yourself with are doing and when. You don't need access to their calendar and you don't need to know exactly what the person is doing, but you do need to know when they are busy, where their 5% breaks are, when are good times to reach them, and when you can expect a response to inquiries. As a location-independent entrepreneur, there is also the issue of different time zones. After all, you don't want to unnecessarily wake up your most important business partner or good friend at 3 in the morning. Once you have discussed this, you simply mark the times when the other person is easily reachable with a corresponding color, analog calendar book, or create a separate digital calendar that you can have displayed overlapping your own if necessary, so you can immediately see when your own free time overlaps with that of the other person. A little hack for quick communication via email is to send your email shortly before the other person starts having free time, using the email function send at a later time. This way, it will appear at the top of the other person's inbox at exactly the right time, and there is a good chance that it will be one of the first to be answered. The 2-minute rule. In short, it's not worth making an appointment for anything that takes less than 2 minutes. It will be done right away. When estimating whether something really only takes 2 minutes, always factor in the personal factor that could lead to an underestimation. Sort tasks by fun factor. Successful people always schedule their most unpleasant appointments for the early morning. The idea behind it is that after that, things can only get better. If you want to start exercising, for example, put your running shoes in front of your bed and make that your first appointment of the day. After that, you'll have it behind you and look forward to all the other less annoying appointments. If you leave your fitness routine for the end of the day, the chances of you postponing it until the next day, skipping it, or extending the previous appointment even further so that you can argue to your inner laziness that you didn't have time. Do not work concentratedly for more than 4 to 5 hours a day in intervals of 20 minutes. This goes against the mentality of so-called hustlers, those who believe they have to work 16 or more hours a day to get ahead. However, most of us have a brain that can only function at maximum performance for about 4 to 5 hours a day. In addition, the attention span of an average adult for a single task is around 20 minutes for maximum performance. With extensive training, this time can allegedly be extended to up to 90 minutes, but then you will need about half of the time you gained as recovery time. So if you want to concentrate and power through an hour at maximum performance, you should plan at least a 20-minute break for your brain afterwards. 40 minutes gain divided by 2. Theme days. Our brain knows something called flow. If we immerse ourselves deeply enough in a type of task, we suddenly find ourselves doing it automatically. Every time we interrupt this flow, no matter how short the interruption, it takes a more or less fixed amount of time for the brain to return to this state. Ideally, we should schedule related tasks that require the same flow status one after the other, rather than jumping from sales calls to accounting or from video editing to writing blog posts. For example, it might be useful to have a writing day on which emails, contracts, etc. are written, then a telephone day whether with customers or grandma. Even if this is not possible with complete days, at least similar blocks are helpful. If you're riding a dead horse, get off. This is especially true for the appointment planner. Successful people are not above canceling an appointment if they realize that it is not getting them anywhere. Mandatory events such as drawer fix or coordination meetings rarely bring about real progress. If appointments cannot be canceled for diplomatic reasons, the next step is to send your assistant to the appointment. At the very latest, when only assistants are talking to each other, there is usually a consensus to cancel it completely. Of course, it is good manners to cancel an appointment in good time, at least the day before. Many motivational trainers often recommend the life hack that you should start the day as early as possible so that you are almost finished by the time others start working. In practice, most successful people are not in the 5 a.m. club. Firstly, everyone has a certain chronotype, an optimal time to get up and go to bed. Deviating from this makes you unproductive. On the other hand, it is of little use if you are awake at 5 a.m., but have to wait until other people are awake for all your appointments that require interaction with them. This then drags out the entire working time and exceeds the 4 to 5 hours maximum working time. As an employee or self-employed person, you often have the limiting belief that you don't have time to learn many new skills because you have to take work all the time, on your own, and constantly. However, certain training courses have a long-term advantage for your own workflow. These can include activities such as touch typing or blind typing, speed reading, mind mapping, or simultaneous translation. Anyone who has learned speed reading for 40 hours and is therefore about average according to Pareto squared will have recouped those 40 hours very quickly if they only need half the time to read future texts. The same applies, for example, to the ability to hear information in one language and write it down directly in another language, or, for example, to type blind in English while speaking German on the phone with your business partner. Of course, such things do not necessarily have to be completed in fixed courses that take up several days of daily business. But in times of digital learning content, they can also be included in the 5% buffer. Assign a ROTI to appointments. ROTI stands for return on time invested and clearly indicates a sum that is calculated from profit, but also loss, at exactly this point in time. A negative ROTI, or loss, is not that bad, as a meal with business friends will often not lead to a new order or generate sales. However, if you notice that appointments with certain people or on certain topics always have a negative ROTI, you should critically examine whether this activity or person justifies it. Use media wisely. Over the last years, virtual meetings have become popular in many areas, and often justified. However, successful people minimize the input that results from these meetings. It is not always necessary for an online meeting to take place with video transmission, unless someone has to present something or the body language of the other person is relevant. Often, it is enough to mute a meeting and activate closed captions or subtitles in order to read along if you have visual activities to do before and after the meeting, and could not schedule the appointment on an audio day anyway. Successful people are also often very set in their use of certain platforms, agreeing every time whether to use Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, or Telegram, and who invites people to which meeting is an unnecessary waste of time. Right access to the calendar. This point, which only affects users of digital calendars, saves a lot of time when coordinating appointments. You can set permissions, for example in Google Calendar, so that people invited to the appointment can reschedule the appointment themselves. This eliminates multiple loops in which you send an invitation, the other person doesn't have time, replies to you asking if you can reschedule the appointment, you then send a new invitation, and so on. Especially with group appointments, you can spend more time setting the appointment than on the actual appointment. Because you gave us your time until this moment, here we have a bonus, especially for all the ladies watching. Plan your workload and schedule along your menstrual cycle. On certain days, you might want a lower workload or taking a day off, while on another day you feel full of power and can squeeze in an extra hour of the difficult stuff. If you have a partner, teach them how to adjust their schedule as well, if you need their support. That's it for today. We see you in our next video with more money and time in your pocket.